Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Wednesday, December 21st. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Peach Bowl game against Georgia is in 10 days. The game against Michigan in 339 days. There is a whole lot going on this week around the Ohio State program. Today is early signing day. We just talked to Alex about that on yesterday's show. And we're doing an extended live show this morning at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle, so you're going to want to make time for that today. But right now, I wanted to get to some of the other really big stuff going on, and I wanted to do that with our old friend, Tony Gerdeman. He just wrote the latest edition of his wildly popular column, What I Know, What I Think, What I Wonder, on several of the big topics of the week. Tony, I think we need to start with the title, because you called this the, quote, come in off the ledge edition. Tony, are you trying to imply that the world is not, in fact, ending for Ohio State?
I'm not saying it's not ending. I'm just saying enjoy the fire and stay warm.
And so much light to read the website by, too. Yes, it's tremendous content there. One thing that I thought was really interesting in your column was your views on Michigan in the transfer portal, because the Wolverines, as of the time we're recording this, have brought in 5 players, which is basically as many as Ohio State has brought in over the past, 3 years combined, something like that. And I think with people in the mindset they are right now, they're kind of inclined to view the Buckeyes as falling behind in that area. But you had an interesting thought on why exactly Michigan has been so portal heavy so far this cycle.
Yeah, I think if you go back and you can just go back to the last few years and look at Michigan's recruiting classes and see how top heavy they are. And you get to the second half of their class, the bottom half of it, and they've signed so many guys like in the 500, 600s, outside of the top 500. And obviously those guys don't pan out as much as the top 100, top 200 guys do. And so now you, rather than have those guys eventually start for you, because it's going to be 3 or 4 years before they're ready, and by that time they're not ready anyway. So you have to go into the portal to make up for that. And so we know they got Oluwatimi from Virginia last year. They went again and got another center this year. So that gives you an idea of they have not been able to sign a center that they believe can play since however long ago. So the last 2 years they've gone and replaced that spot with somebody else, and you're bringing in other guys, pass rushers. And so it's a way to make up for the lack of recruiting at the level that you need, and the lack of development as well, because you can go ahead and sign a bunch of 3-stars if you want. If they become Ronnie Bell, that's one thing. They don't always become Ronnie Bell. And so when the development isn't there, then you have to go get guys who have been developed elsewhere. And I think for Michigan, it makes sense because they don't have the recruiting base that an Ohio State has, or that a Georgia or, Florida schools or whatever. So you've got to do it in different ways. And I think this is one way that can keep them from falling behind, because even now, I think they've got like the number 19 recruiting class, something like that. And I don't know that they'll ever get back to being a top 5 class like they would back in the 80s and 90s. And a long time ago, they were an outstanding national recruiting program, just in case you didn't know that. But this allows them to supplement their recruiting with proven players. That's how they will have to do it. It's not saying that's the right way or the only way to do it. And when Ohio State fans see Michigan very, very active in the portal, and Ohio State not getting as active or not landing their guys, there are different motivations for each program. And so just because Michigan is landing guys right now and Ohio State isn't, the need is greater, I would say, for Michigan because of the recruiting aspect of it.
Yeah, so that'll be an interesting thing to watch. I do wonder, Michigan has not really been able to come into Ohio and beat Ohio State consistently for significant players like they did in the early 90s, the Elvis Grbac and Charles Woodson and Desmond Howard kind of guys. Those guys have all been going to Ohio State over the last few years. Michigan has pulled guys out of Ohio, but has generally not been guys with Ohio State offers. It'll be interesting to see, if there is a point at which in the coming years that starts to swing back the other way after a couple Michigan wins in a row. So we'll keep an eye on that one. Something else we're going to keep an eye on is the ongoing recruitment of 2024's number 1 overall player, Dylan Raiola. He was a Buckeye until he wasn't. He decommitted earlier this week. We've had a couple shows on that already. It will probably continue to be a significant topic of conversation. But, one of the things we got to talk about is where he might end up. Is that Ohio State? Is there somewhere else? and what he may or may not be getting promised elsewhere. And, Nebraska is obviously a school with a lot of family ties. His uncle coaches there. It is, his quote unquote dream school. And, given their history or lack thereof with developing quarterbacks, which you talked about, you would sort of figure that dream school or not, there'd have to be a lot on offer to keep them in the running. So, talked to Mark Giffler a couple days ago. He said, from all indications on both sides here, this was not an NIL thing. So this is not NIL. This is when we talk about what's being offered, we're not talking about money. But, given how big this could be for Matt Rule to sort of build his program around this 5-star quarterback who, has been a little bit of a Pied Piper on the recruiting trail over the last year for Ohio State, it seems like just about anything else, though, could be on the table there for Matt Rule.
Yeah, and if you're Matt Rule and you're looking to make the biggest splash that you can, if you can land the top quarterback in the 2024 class, and what does it, what do you have to make promises of, or what do you have to promise? They're still looking for a quarterback's coach, and there are rumors that maybe the Raiolas would have some input on that. And I don't know if that's true or not, but if you are Matt Rule and they say the family's like, hey, we would, just tell us, we would like some input. Doesn't mean you have to listen or whatever, but if you're Matt Rule, and you want this guy, and the key is to get him on campus, and then you can mold him. That's the first key. That's the most important thing. Get them on campus, and then you kind of wisen them to the ways. Like JT Tuimoloau, I want to play basketball and football. And then you get him on campus. He's like, yeah, basketball is going to take too much work. So the realization of, college life as you get there. And if you just get the guy in and then go from there, because he's going to be, you would think, a Pied Piper type of guy for recruiting. But again, it's how loudly do you have to play this pipe to get guys to come to Nebraska? And, the only way to find out is to find the guy the first guy, and bring him in and see, will he bring anybody else? Will anybody follow him? But if you're Matt Rule and you're looking to make a splash and you're starting over, and, you got to do what you got to do. And if this is a guy that is willing to listen, then you need to be willing to tell him whatever he wants to hear, basically.
Well, and it also allows you, if you have a 2024 quarterback coming, then that allows you to sell hope for a whole first year, where the first year almost doesn't matter. Do you win 6 games, make a bowl game? Do you win 3 games? It doesn't matter. The number 1 player for 2024 is coming. So, and then of course you've got to be patient with him then, because he's only a true freshman, and you can, and of course, I have no indication that Dylan Raiola is planning on reclassifying, but if he was, he would not be the first player in the history of football to reclassify. I don't think he's going to do that, but we have seen it before, so we'll, you never know there, but you're trying to project this stuff out on Nebraska side. It's just as difficult to try and project out the quarterback position on Ohio State side, because you got into a whole thing. I think you could sort of put a little spreadsheet together with, okay, here, this guy's going to start this year, this guy's going to start this year. Hey, if this guy starts, this guy might transfer, whatever it is. I think for the last few months, you would certainly have had Dylan Raiola as Ohio State's starting quarterback in 2026. Now, it really is an interesting thought exercise. Okay, now who is Ohio State's starting quarterback in 2026? Because, as you pointed out, with the way things are going, it honestly might be more likely that a person who is a freshman on some other roster right now is Ohio State's starting quarterback in 2026, as compared to someone who is on Ohio State's roster this coming spring.
Yeah, and the guys that you're recruiting the very best quarterbacks in the nation. And those guys, if all goes as planned for them, they're 3 years and out, as Ohio State has seen with Justin Fields, Dwayne Haskins, and now CJ Stroud. And so, if everything moves as quickly as it could, this could be Kyle McCord's last year. And then Devin Brown is your starter in 24 and 25. And so then in 26, you've got a third year Lincoln Keenholz, whoever they get in 24, whoever they get in 25. And then, there is the transfer portal. And Ohio State, if there's an open position, is going to be one of the top spots for a quarterback to land. And at that point, he would be a fifth-year senior. You're talking about like a Devin Leary type of guy at North Carolina State, or one of these guys that has not toiled, but has produced at their school. And then they're like, well, you know what? I'm a graduate now. I can go wherever I want. And this could be the second time that guy has transferred, because they can do their one-time transfer as an underclassman. And then as the graduate, they can be like, you know what? I'm going to go again. So I think the idea that the quarterback has to come from the recruiting tree that's the ideal. But as we just talked about with Michigan, sometimes you can make things better by going to the portal if things have not gone ideal in recruiting. And not that they aren't going to go well for Ohio State's quarterback recruiting. I just think there's look at the freshman class right now and say, you know what? Maybe this guy sits for a couple of years and then he stars for a year or two at his current school and then wants to go play at Ohio State. Maybe he lights it up at Memphis, one of those things, and then matures and grows and becomes the guy that everybody wants, that ends up somewhere, and Ohio State might be in the market by that time. Yeah,
and going out to 2026, there's all sorts of fun. Who's going to be Ohio State's quarterback's coach? Who's going to be Ohio State's offensive coordinator at that point? Who's going to be Ohio State's head coach at that point? There's a lot of football to be played between now and 2026, so we might be having a conversation based on a lot of assumptions that are not necessarily true. So it's just kind of a fun thought exercise. It's there's a lot that's sort of up in the air right now with college football. That's certainly one piece of it. More, a little shorter term, Mark and I talked about possible replacements for Raiola in the 2024 class earlier this week. You had one guy who you said you knew you would make a call to. Who was that?
Yeah, Colin Hurley out of Florida, who was a 2025 guy and then reclassified to 2024 and committed to LSU. And so he had a good relationship with Ohio State. You guys saw him down there at camp and was really, really impressive. But once he became a 2024 kid, he was basically out of the picture because Ohio State had Dylan Raiola. And so now that picture has opened up, I would be shocked if they didn't give him a call to see if they can get back into his good graces. Not that he was out of them, but he was not an option as a 2024 guy, because obviously you're not going to get both of those guys. So now that the options are open, I would definitely call him. He's a guy that has been starting since he was a freshman year in big time Florida football, has been productive, has produced, and has that relationship. So they're going to be calling a lot of guys. He might be the first guy I call.
Yeah, there are definitely a lot of names to watch, especially that far out in terms of high school recruits, in terms of portal, in terms of hey, Lincoln Kienholz would only be potentially in his fourth year at that point so you could have a guy on the current roster. This is all just the fun speculative thing where we're trying to project out the completely unknowable with 12 to 15 variables involved, and hey, what are the NIL rules going to look like that far out? Like, okay, good luck trying to guess on all that stuff. So this probably will not be the last show we ever do talking about Ohio State's quarterback recruiting or the Buckeyes, but it will. There's going to be plenty to talk about this week. Early signing day, of course, is today. As I mentioned, we're going to have a long early signing day special at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. If you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to that channel. Make sure you are subscribed to that channel. Make sure you hit that bell so you get notified. We got a lot of really, really cool stuff coming. Kevin and Mark have been producing all sorts of stuff to sort of get you up to speed on who all these guys are who are becoming Buckeyes today, and where all this stuff is headed for Ohio State football moving forward. And one of the other places it's going to be headed is Atlanta, Georgia. Tony and I will be there. What is it? Saturday night, Sunday? I don't know. A few days. As soon as you're done celebrating Christmas, we will start celebrating the Peach Bowl. We'll be doing that from Atlanta. Should be plenty of fun stuff to talk about there as well. And the best place to talk about all of this is at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Tony's column, as I said, is a very popular feature on there, and it is a feature just for our members. And we talked about a couple of the really interesting things in there. He got some feedback from scouts on Dylan Raiola and his game and all that kind of stuff. It was really, really interesting stuff. So If you want to read more about that, you can find it all on the Huddle board at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Sign up today. It is the price of a lousy chain store pizza. You believe me, you won't even miss the money. You will miss out on some great Ohio State football content if you're not a member of BuckeyeHuddle.com. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.